Hi, Ruby. Thank you so much for joining us today. So for everyone watching, this is Ruby, and she is an art therapist, and she has come up with a really cool tool for back to school this year, which is this zine. And so I really wanted to introduce you all to Ruby and have a chance to chat about some of her cool art therapy resources. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, hi everybody.
So, Ruby, before we jump into the zine, do you want to just share a little bit about sort of like who you are and what you do as an art therapist?
Sure, yeah. I'm a registered psychotherapist and a registered art therapist. I work with kids and families, supporting them to creatively overcome difficulties. Um, I work mostly with kids ages 3 to 13. My office is at Shift Family Health Center in Fergus. Um, and so I really enjoy just helping families to figure out how they can use their own creativity and their own sort of resources to meet whatever challenge they're facing. Work with lots of kids and families who are kind of um, anxieties showed up in different ways, and so we kind of find creative ways to work with that anxiety.
Yeah, I love that so much, Ruby, especially, I mean, for all mental health concerns. And I think even, preventative wellness in kids, art is such
Mhm.
a beautiful tool. But particularly, I mean, my practice focuses on anxiety. And I find kids with anxiety, they are so creative. And that can go one of two ways. You can imagine these worst case scenarios, be quite creative with what could go wrong, or you can harness that creativity into, imagining things going very well. And that can be incredibly powerful in kids, I find.
Absolutely, I agree. I really like talking about sort of recruiting their imagination to help them. So, like sometimes
Hmm.
imagination can feel really scary, but they can use that same power and that same strength that they have as like a helper.
As a helper. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really agree. That can be really powerful in kids. And I've been watching we haven't been able to get together because it's been a pandemic. But I've been
Yeah.
watching your crafts online that you've been sharing. And there's been so many great ones that you've put out, through the course of the pandemic. I know, I really want to talk about the zine today, but I'm thinking even of the mask that you put out,
Oh,
the
yeah.
mask craft that you put out earlier, is like getting kids used to the idea of wearing masks and drawing smiling eyes
Yeah.
and just bringing to life what's happening right now in a
Hmm.
way
Yeah.
that's playful and creative.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's one of the things I love the most about art therapy is because we get to use um, art and creativity and play as the way that we kind of like process some of the hard stuff. And I think that collectively we've just been going through so much hard stuff in the last
Yeah.
little while. And um, I'm just really thinking about families at home and kind of like sort of not being connected to maybe some of the resources that they were before, and just really
Mhm.
wanted to sort of help families to bring in the creativity and bring in the play as we work through this tough stuff because um, that's the way that kids naturally process things and how they integrate new information and new experiences. And so just really want to, I just like, that's what I love in my practice too. Like when we can find the play in it, it's like it makes the hard stuff a little bit easier and it just helps
Mhm.
everybody, I think, to feel a bit more empowered and kind of at ease. So it's sort of my hope with sharing activities.
For sure. And I think it's absolutely doing that. My daughter is 4, and I know just from watching her play throughout the past, 5 months, I've been able to see when she's doing maybe better, when things are a little bit harder. And it's been interesting watching her act out, different
Mhm.
situations with social distancing. And, she had these 2 little socks and they were being puppets. And she was like, they're 2 friends, but they're not in the same family, so they can't give each other a hug, but they really want to. And she had
Aw,
seen a friend the day before, and you could just tell that that was her, processing wanting to hug. So that natural inclination to use play
yes.
is how kids, that's their natural way to express this. And so tell me a little bit about like the zine and how that sort of came about and how we can use that to encourage kids to use play and build up their toolbox for heading back to school this year.
For sure. Yeah. Just one comment about the puppets and the
Yeah.
so another part that is really important to me that I just find is so cool is that like when kids show us things in their play, it's kind of like it's a window into sort of how they're thinking and feeling, but it can also be kind of an opportunity to talk about things that they might not want to talk about in another context outside of play. So like,
Mm.
you know, even just for saying they can't give each other a hug, but they really want to. And then depending on the situation, that might be an opportunity for you to just acknowledge and say, oh, that feels really sad. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
and to sort of talk with her about her own experience, but because it's the two sock puppets, it feels a little bit safer and a bit like
Mm-hmm.
not as sort of raw. And so I think it gives us these really neat opportunities to talk with our kids about what's going on. So that's another element of the activities that I think is really important. So
Yeah,
um,
narrating those and questioning, oh, how do they feel about that? Yeah, that's really
mhm.
helpful.
Yeah, and opportunities too. I find to sometimes um, like it's sometimes necessary to sort of provide some more information or maybe correct some false information. So I find
Yeah.
that a lot with kids. Like when we're playing it out, then I can see sort of where they're at and how they're understanding something, and then I can kind of join the play and say like, you know, like we can't give a hug, but we can still wave. And how else can we show that we really care about our friend, or like
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like build on where they are. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Ruby. That's super helpful.
you. Yeah. Okay. So about the zine. So I was just thinking about kids getting ready to go back to school and just not really knowing exactly what we're heading into. And so as a kid, I experienced a lot of back to school anxiety. And I just remember like the weeks leading up to school, just the sense of like, it's coming and I got to get ready. And like, just so I was thinking about families this year and just thinking like, what would be like, what might be helpful and what can we truly kind of prepare for?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and just noticing that like especially a couple weeks ago, like we didn't know what it was going to look like. And so I was thinking like one of the skills that we're all going to need this fall is just kind of managing in that unknown and dealing with the uncertainty of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the one thing that's pretty much guaranteed is that there's going to be some big feelings as we head
Yes.
into all this change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like it's no matter what, it's going to be a huge change for kids if they're heading back to online learning, if they're heading back to school full time. Like it's a huge change from where we've been the last couple of months. um,
Mm-hmm.
and so just thinking that lots of kids already have coping skills and strategies, but when we're kind of in the moment sometimes we can forget those.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted a creative way to sort of bring all of that together and remind kids of their skills and to sort of have like a bit of a refresher and something tangible and physical that they could take with them so they feel like, okay, I don't know what this first day is going to be like, but if some big feelings come, I have some tools kind of literally in my pocket that I can use no matter what shows up. So that's what I like about the coping skills is that they're helpful no matter what kind of comes our way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about some of the coping skills that you've put inside the zine to help remind kids? Because it's kind of set up like, I mean, if for those of you that haven't heard of a zine before, it's kind of like a self-made magazine. And Ruby's made
Yeah.
this template that can be
Here, I
like
can show you.
colored and yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure how well this is gonna work.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
like it's a little booklet, and I can go through each page, but just to show you, it's just like a single piece of paper, and so you just
Oh.
print it. The like there's a template that you can print on
Mm-hmm.
paper, and then
It's
there's a
like
little
pocket sized.
yeah, there's a little video for how to fold it, and then you just have to do
Yeah,
um,
and we'll link to
one
this so that people can see, where to download it and how to fold it and things like that.
yeah, so there's just like one little cut in the middle there, but then once you do that, the page just kind of folds up into a
Art
little
therapy is
book.
kind of magic.
It is kind of
I'm not
magic.
crafty, so I love this.
Yeah, so zines are from like the comic community. So lots of
Mhm.
comic artists make them and trade them. And the idea that it's something that you make yourself, and so it's like self-published, like a mini magazine, and it's meant to be very DIY and lots of artists will literally like photocopy their zines on a photocopier and then kind of trade copies. And so I really like that idea because it's not too precious. It's like just something that we're kind of making in the moment, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So anyways, yeah, so the front page is just so you can personalize. I also have one that I made, so like kids can decorate it with their name and their favorite colors. And then inside there's different, like it's kind of like a fill in the blank. So the first page is just for naming what the feeling is. So it says, sometimes at school I feel blank and it's hard for me. So I was thinking like it would be helpful to just kind of pick one difficult feeling, and so it doesn't feel overwhelming. So for some kids, maybe that's anxious. I really like using kids' own words for their experience. So asking them, like, what is the name of that experience? Like, is it anxious? Is it nervous? I drew a picture of nervous in mine.
They might say they feel sad.
Worried. Homesick is one sometimes.
Yeah.
Lonely. I find like some kids are worried about feeling lonely at school. And then just acknowledging that that feeling is hard. Like when it comes, that feels hard. And then drawing what they think that the feeling looks like. And then underneath it just says, everyone feels this way sometimes. That's kind of based on Kristen Neff's work around self-compassion. Just kind of recognizing that when we're having a hard time, we're not the only ones that are experiencing that. We're kind of collectively in this together, and everybody feels, no matter what the feeling is, everybody feels it sometimes. And
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, so we're not alone. And then it just says, when the feeling comes, my coping skills can help me. So then the rest of the booklet is for their coping skills. So kind of thinking specifically of like what helps with that feeling. So if they pick anxious or if they pick worried, then we're going to think of the tools that help specifically with that experience.
Right. What helps me feel less worried.
Yeah. And so like the great thing is you can print more. So if they have more difficult feelings, you can make another one for
different books for different feelings. Yeah. I think that'd be helpful for some kids. You know, I'm thinking in my mind of, you know, the feelings wheel, and some, you know, what's helpful when you're feeling sad or lonely is different than when you're feeling frustrated or angry. And so sometimes whichever is the hardest is probably a good place to start. But it's okay if you need more than one.
Yeah. And they might notice that some of the coping skills are the same, and that would be kind of neat too to talk about, like, you know, like, so yeah, I think especially this first one. So the first one is, I could take a few deep breaths. So I tried to write it like a positive affirmation. So with each of the strategies, they can like just things that they can do. So just saying like, I can take a few deep breaths. And then there's space to sort of write or draw a breathing
strategy. How they like
strategy.
to breathe. Nice.
Yeah. And so sometimes kids make up their own. I like to do the take 5 breathing. I didn't make it up, but you just kind of like trace up your hand. So when you trace up, you breathe in, and then when you trace down, you exhale. You go all along, like all 5 fingers. So that's one of my favorite ones. But I know sometimes I think you do box breathing.
Yeah, I teach a lot of box breathing. I know some families do like around food, like cookies or macaroni or whatever their kid's favorite. And I've also tried, my daughter doesn't like this one, but like with a stuffed animal on the stomach and laying down and practicing giving them a ride and moving them up and down. That can work for some kids. My daughter hates that one, but you know.
Yeah. I also put that one first because I think it's just so important to sort of bring in some of the nervous system regulation. So like no matter what the feeling is, it's activating in some way. So just starting with the breath to kind of like just bring a little bit of like chemical calm to our bodies by taking those deep breaths.
Yeah, I agree. Starting with the chemical calm, regulating our nervous system through the vagus nerve, like that is what we want to be focusing on first.
For sure. Yeah. And then the next one is kind of connected to that. So the next one is, I can connect with my body. So some physical actions I can do at school. So just recognizing that for kids, a big part of their emotion regulation is through moving their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Developmentally, that's just kind of where they're at. And I think it's helpful for all of us our whole lives, but
Yes.
especially helpful for kids. So just trying to think of a way for them to connect with their body. And that also kind of brings in the mindfulness of like, especially with worries, they kind of take us way out of where we are right now. So
Mm-hmm.
just kind of connecting to our body to remember, like, I'm right here, right now. So even just like taking a drink of water, or doing some kind of a stretch or giving themselves a hug, or just like, like we
Mm-hmm.
can't give each other hugs, but we can still give ourselves hugs right now. So that can
Mm-hmm.
feel really nice. The one thing I was thinking with this is that it might be helpful for adults to kind of check what's going to be available at school, because I know like
Yeah.
some things might be different this year. Like maybe there's not a hub room, or maybe we can't kind of take a break to walk down the hall. So maybe just sort of checking to make sure that what's in that book is actually going to be an option, because I wouldn't want kids to get there and then feel like, oh, I can't do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have my outlet. So
Yeah. No, that's good too to think about, is that things that have been available in past years might not be. So if you can, reach out. I know schools are so busy right now,
yeah.
managing everything, but, if you can reach out, if your child has, a plan that they've had in previous years with their teacher, that might be a good time to like reassess what's going to be available from that. And again, starting with those physical coping exercises that are more likely to be available because they're going to be with your child. So, I think when you think of the examples of like having a drink of water, like children are, the water fountains, at least in Upper Grand, the water fountains are closed, but you can fill your water bottle there. You just can't drink from them. So you can have a drink from your water bottle. No one's going to tell you can't hug yourself. Like these are things
Yeah.
that exist. So starting with those simpler ones, even if, going for a walk down the hall was a tool in the past, that might not be available right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The next page it says, I can manage my worries.
Mm,
So I think this one's really important because even if kids are kind of struggling with frustration or anger, or like sort of a more like acting out kind of, I
mm-hmm.
think like often there can be some worries and some um, anxiety underneath. Like I think that those things
Mm-hmm.
can kind of be present at the same time. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to have a space specifically around worries. And I think like we might even have some new worries this year. Like we didn't have worries about getting sick before, or about other people getting sick, or about germs, and or maybe not all kids had worries about that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that was, again, there's just space. So whatever kind of strategy your child has for their worries. So sometimes with my clients, we make like a little, I forgot it at my office, but it's like a little
Oh, your
cup.
little owl. Yes.
And then you can like put cards in the back of it. It has like a pocket in the back, and so it's like a little helper that holds onto their worries, so they can kind of take a
Mm-hmm.
break from them. But there's lots
Mm-hmm.
of ideas around that.
Mm-hmm.
Like a pipe cleaner, worry helper, or a special box or container that they go inside. Can also just be something like they can write it on a piece of paper and fold it up and put it in their bag. Just a way, like a place for their worries at school, so
Mm-hmm.
that they can kind of express those and let them out, but they don't have to be kind of holding on to them for the whole
Yeah.
time.
Not keeping them with them.
Yeah,
I just love that so much. And I love how similar these techniques are to what I work with adults on. It's
yeah,
it's sometimes you just need to write them down and let them be somewhere that's not inside your body.
totally. Yeah, it's really hard to learn when your head's like full of all these worries that you're holding on to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next page is about a positive affirmation. So I can remember these words. So
Mm.
your favorite encouraging phrase or positive affirmation. My favorite one is, I can do hard things.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, and I think we can really draw on our kids' past successes, even when it feels like we're in a brand new situation. Our kids
Mm-hmm.
have already done so many hard things, faced so much uncertainty. So we can remind them
Mm-hmm.
of that. Like, this is a different situation, but I know you have what it takes, and I've seen you do lots of hard things, and
Yeah.
so it's going to continue to be true. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this could also be something like, so if you're a parent sending your kiddo to school, it can also be words from you. So maybe it's something that you say to them when they're at home, something that kind of encourages them. So maybe even you write it in your writing and they can see your handwriting in the book and they can remember it. Like they can kind of imagine you saying that to them even when they're at school.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives
Yeah.
something to focus on too. Like once we've kind of had a safe space for the worries, we can focus instead on the
On the
positive words.
positive.
Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if we just take something away, it feels like, oh, there's just like space now. So we can sort of replace with a positive
Replace it. I love that. It gives a place for the attention. So we're not saying that you're not worried or you don't have your feelings. We're very intentionally saying, I have this feeling.
Yeah.
Let's connect with my body. Let's let go of this feeling. And then let's bring in another positive place for my attention and focus. It's very, it's so thoughtful, Ruby. I just love it so
Thank
much.
you. The last one is about connecting with somebody else. So I can talk about my feelings. So at school, I
Mm-hmm.
can always talk to you. And then just hoping to identify like one person at school that kids, kind of like a safe person that kids could talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was kind of imagining like maybe a guidance counselor, um, but it could be a teacher or an EA, bus driver, lunchtime helper. It might even be like a sibling or a friend.
Yeah.
Like I've had kids say, my best friend really understands my feelings, and that's somebody I can talk to. Um,
Yeah. That's really
so
beautiful.
yeah, I put that one at the end just because um, I really like to encourage kids to sort of build their competency in terms of like managing their feelings, their tough feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So the other ones are kind of things that they can try on their own first. But sometimes something is just too big. It's too like so. Sometimes we need
Yeah.
someone else to sort of help us hold on to that. So um, I wanted that to be included, but was kind of thinking like for some kids, maybe they can try some of these things first. So maybe if it's just like, oh, it's like the worries just kind of right here. And so maybe trying some of these strategies on their own first, maybe that will be enough. And then maybe some days that's not going to be enough and they're going to need some help from a teacher or from somebody
Yeah.
else.
And that's such it's such good advice, especially because it encourages that resiliency in children and that self-talk from a place of capability, and reminding them of their tools, and then also saying like everyone sometimes has problems or feelings that are too big for them to manage all by themselves, and you don't have to.
Yeah,
Right. And I
yeah.
think we need to remember that for our own feelings as our kids, like as parents, as kids go back to school this year too, is that like, we want to use our techniques so that we can show up for our kids. And then if it becomes too much, it's okay to bring in support for ourselves as well as support for our kids. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I love it when I'm able to kind of create um, tools and strategies with my little clients. But then I also love asking, like, who can help you? Like, who can help you remember this or who can remind you of this? Um, so the last page is just, I drew myself and just a little note from me saying
Yeah.
like, so especially my clients that I already work with, just I want them
Hmm.
to know like, hey, you know what? That's me on the back. And so like, just remember that even though I'm not there at school, I'm thinking about you and I'm cheering you on and like kind of like you're not by yourself.
Hmm.
But I also think like it's a great opportunity too. So once you have this little booklet, like some kids might just want to keep it to themselves, but for some families, it might be really helpful to say like these are things you can try on your own, but let's make a copy and let's give it to your teacher so your teacher knows what
Hmm.
and they can help you with this. So maybe maybe
Yeah.
you need to take a break or maybe you need to take some deep breaths. And so teachers kind of part of the team, right? Like and can be really
Hmm.
supportive of that, of the child sort of starting to self-regulate and starting to take care and do what they need in
Yeah.
these challenging moments. And I
Yeah.
had a little client who wanted to share it with their friend. And so it's like, my friend can help me remember because sometimes in those stressful moments, it's easy to forget that we have tools and we have things that might help. So
Mm-hmm.
You make copies and you can share it.
Just like a zine.
Exactly.
Photocopy it. Give it to people that need to see it. I love that. I find, I mean, from a clinical perspective, when I am working with children, and I do find that schools are often quite appreciative of having those resources, and teachers of like, this is what we've talked about. This is what clinically would be helpful for this child in a school environment. And I often find that the schools and the teachers are interested in doing whatever they can to accommodate those. Now, sometimes it's not, they aren't able to accommodate everything that could be helpful. But I think the desire is there, right? And so it's a great idea to share that with a teacher. And I think also, sometimes we forget how close friendships can be between children, right? And and that's so beautiful that they would want to share those resources with their friends. And like, of course they would.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes friends have really great ideas of, other things that could help. Or say really, like the page about the words you want to remember. Like maybe they're even from a friend. Like what does your friend say when the worries come? Um,
Mm-hmm.
or what would you say to your friend?
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to your friend? Ah, I love that. I know we're going to put the link to connect with the zine below this video. And if you're watching this on Instagram, head over to Ruby's handle, which we will put below. It's Resourceful Me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Resourceful Me Art Therapy. Yeah.
at Resourceful Me Art Therapy. And you'll be able to find that more easily through Ruby's site. Instagram's not great for linking, so
Yeah, I just have like a list of links, but it should be at the top.
perfect.
It's like the top one or two.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just mean we can put it in the comments there. And
Yeah.
Ruby, if people want to connect with you more, where can I send them? Like, where should they go if they want to learn more about you and art therapy for kids?
Yeah, so Instagram is great. And also I would say my website. So it's resourcefulmearttherapy.ca. I can send you,
Perfect.
or you can
So
write it out. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll make sure to link to both of those. And if you have any questions about this for Ruby, leave them in the comments below this video, and I'll do my best to try and tag Ruby in case she can like give any clarification. But you've explained it so well, and I know there's a blog and videos that go along with it. So thank you so much in how you've equipped this tool out for children and families, because it's a really lovely gift during this time.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for this opportunity to share about it. Just
Yeah.
the last thing I want to say was just that I think it's really great if kids can be very like involved in creating this, and if they can kind of put their own twist on the strategies, because I just find that if they're part of creating it, then they feel kind of more excited or optimistic about trying these things. So I find that
Yeah.
that usually works better, like kind of asking them like, what do you think would help you to take some deep breaths, instead of me kind of saying like, this is what you do.
So this
um,
is really meant to be as much to encourage as much independence in the creating of this as possible. So if kids, can write out their strategies themselves, it should be in their own handwriting, their own coloring, their own ideas of what it is. Even if they can't write, getting their
yeah,
ideas is what to write as the strategies.
yeah. Just
Yeah.
really like creating it together. And I think like it's also just a reminder of that time together of, thinking about this and kind of taking care of this, which I think can be empowering in itself too.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely just creating this workbook is a healing and preparing experience. So
That's my hope. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that that's really, really important to remember, that sometimes it's the work together, not the product, that is the
Mm,
medicine or the healing.
yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's both.
I think it is
Yeah.
both too, but I think
Yeah.
sometimes we can get caught up in the outcome.
Hmm.
What are we working
Yeah.
towards? And whether that's in therapy or art therapy or naturopathic medicine, right? And we forget that it's the process where the
Yeah.
healing happens as much as the results that
Hmm.
we're working towards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Ruby, do you have any parting words for families as they head back to school this year?
Just that I'll be thinking of you and just sending so much so much love and so many thoughts. And yeah, just that we're all in this together, and you're not alone, and
I love
and
that.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time today, Ruby, and for everything that you've created, the zine and your other projects in this pandemic. I know you regularly put out crafts on your blog and on your Instagram to help families, and it's just so appreciated always, but I think especially during this time.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.